My B.
All right, guys, what's going on? Discount Bourbon review here again. We've got a little bit of an upgrade to our camera, and we're starting off today with a Blade and Bow review.
I'm very excited about the Blade and Bow myself. I'm a big fan of the Stitzelweller distillery.
Legendary.
Legendary, absolutely. But this one's got that same Solera process that we were talking about with the Stranahans that they do previously. And so I've got very high expectations for it. 91 proof. I believe it's primarily a whiskey, or not whiskey, a wheated blend.
I think it is a wheated blend as well. There's not exactly a description of the grain bill available, but it's predominantly appeared to be a wheated bourbon. And to touch on the Solera process in there, I absolutely think it's one of the most incredible processes when it comes to whiskey, where they're taking some of that older juice and they're mixing it back in. So they have a Blade and Bow 22 year on top of just this unaged, no age statement on this one.
Okay.
And they take some of that 22-year juice, mixing it back in with some of this much younger stuff, so you can kind of elevate the overall product itself. It's also seen in the Stranahans line. You're going to have to check that video out, like Dylan mentioned. But other than that, ready to pour up.
Yeah.
Get into this. The Weller Distillery, W.L. Weller, as named in his whiskey. You know, there's some bottles out there floating around on it. But he was a legendary distributor, and he had some workers work for him that ended up going working for other distilleries later on, and it caused the two to merge, the distiller and the distributor, creating the Stitzelweller brand. And one of their head employees, Julian Van Winkle, ran the place pretty great, I guess, because they named a whiskey after him. And that's where they got the Pappy Van Winkle lineup. So some pretty sacred juice.
Absolutely.
I guess has gone through this distillery before they shut down back in '92.
Absolutely. And just a fun fact that I read up on when we were getting ready for the Blade and Bow, I found out that the Stitzelweller distillery opened up on, I don't remember exactly which year it was, if you know the year.
I think it was 32.
It was Kentucky Derby Day that day.
Was it Kentucky Derby Day?
It was Kentucky Derby Day that day.
That's so exciting. Well, they have this key that they put on these bottles. My key's over here hanging off on the side. But the keys are supposed to represent the good bourbon making process. I believe it was grains, yeast, aging, fermentation, and time. We'll go with that. I said aging twice, but something along those lines. And there were the 5 keys to the different areas of the distillery where they would keep the juice. And I think it's a really neat process. If you can collect all 5 of those keys, they actually give you a little club membership on their website.
They also attribute the 5 keys to Southern hospitality, warmth, and just traditional homely vibes. I was reading online.
But at 91 proof, I get a lot of the sweetness.
Oh, there's definitely a lot of sweetness. I get
All that caramel.
I get a lot more vanilla than caramel. It's very sweet. I get the sugar, but I get a lot of vanilla off the nose of them. Not a whole lot of wood smell to it. The oak is very subdued in the smell.
And it's not particularly smoky or woody, but I mean, it's there, of course. So any whiskey is.
Oh, yeah.
It smells like a good, sweet, wheated bourbon. You know, I think it's going to be a real smooth sip. I think it's going to be a real sweet sip.
It is a very, very sweet sip, especially towards the back end of it. You can really feel that sweetness just kind of take over the whole palate, just in general. The front end of it, it's very smoky, I would say.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a spice.
Just right up there in front. Just, it kind of wants to come in, and then it kind of mellows out with that sweetness right there at the rear end of it.
When I think of like the highest end of smoky, I start thinking towards like scotches. I start thinking towards that peat moss kind of flavor. So when I smell this, I don't want to say it's quite smoky. It's definitely got that wood. It's definitely got that char to it, you know?
You do get some spice in the smell as well.
It lingers. It lingers for a second. I'm still definitely chewing on that first bite. I'm still feeling a little bit of that spice.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't want to leave too fast.
But he definitely has some remnants of Weller Green in here. I mean, be it that they're just wheated bourbons, they're going to be pretty similar across the board, but there's some similarities.
You can feel the similarities between the two. I believe that at the very least the special reserve that we've got over here, it's a little bit more. I want to say the special reserve is more honey sweet than sugar sweet or caramel sweet. You know what I mean? Like it's still a very nice sweet sipper, but this one just feels a little bit more like sugar sweet.
It definitely does have a little bit more of an abruptness to it. I think that when comparing against the Weller Green over there, it's quite a smooth, easy, and sweet sip, almost honey-like in a way. But this one definitely has a little bit more spice and bold characteristics.
Definitely.
I'd say they're beginning to start taking on some of those early red fruit notes, but I think it's not quite as developed and strong as some high proof stuff out there.
Yeah.
I think at a higher proof, that stuff would really become a bit more apparent.
Oh yeah. I'm sure in that 22 year too, it's very upfront with you in the red fruit and vanilla category. But with smell, it has a wonderful smell. It's just not as pungent is the word that I'm going to use. There's definitely a strong smell there with it, but nothing very too complex. You can kind of feel out the notes pretty quickly if you're ready to accept them. And I'd probably put it around a 7 or 8. It's good smells, but nothing crazy like, oh, you gotta sniff this one. You gotta try and
as especially
let me
gets
know
down to the dregs here. I mean, of course, it's super ethanol forward, but it's got a good nose. You know, it's something that you'd think about. I definitely place that a little bit above the average nose. I'm by no means offended by it, but I'm not impressed either. So I think that puts me in 5 or 6 territory. Overall taste, I think I really like it. I think it's definitely a 7 or an 8. It's an easy sipper. It's nothing too complex or crazy. It's definitely something to help you warm up.
Oh, yeah. When it comes to flavor, I probably would go a little bit less. The good flavor, I absolutely like it, but for being,
I think price point is where it really starts affecting these things.
yeah,
you know what I mean.
When we're talking about a $55 bottle and 91 proof, I would expect and want just a little bit more complexity to come out of it. And there is some complexity there. You can taste it.
They're trying for it with the Solera process.
Absolutely. But I would probably put flavor down at probably about a 6. It's good. I like it. I would definitely say it's sipper territory for me. I don't think
price is, I think, the most interesting category for this one because it's a good whiskey, but it's not a great whiskey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's something that I'd like to have around. I'd like to share, but as far as it getting low and me running out to immediately replace it, I don't know if that's necessarily the case.
Yeah.
I think it's a great whiskey from a legendary company, and it's worth it at the price point. For someone that's excited to try it, excited for wheated bourbons, it may just be your favorite wheated bourbon. But as for me, I think there's a couple other options that I really like. So, with price point in mind, a great bourbon, a good bourbon from a great distillery, I'm probably putting that at about 7. I'd say a little bit better than average, but nothing too crazy.
I think overall I'd probably stick at about a 7 as well. I think 7's a good one for this one because it is very good. Very good flavor. It's just nothing crazy to write home about. Like if I had this and especially goodness gracious big boy here, Special Reserve Weller sitting here next to each other.
These are equivalent price points in our market.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And for what I think Weller being a far superior whiskey, this is just something I'd rather stock.
Yeah. I'd probably sooner make sure that I've got bottles of the Special Reserve on my bar over the Blade and Bow. I do want a bottle of Blade and Bow on my bar though.
I think the 22 year is probably where there's going to be something a bit more special, but with it being such a limited release and us being the discount bourbon boys, we only got access to so many products.
Only so many. Unless you know someone real cool that's willing to sell it for $30.
Yeah. I think that one went pretty well overall.